Intelligence is nothing really other than information and knowledge. For the days of Socrates, by various methods, and even before that, mankind has been seeking knowledge of everything that influences his own life or the life of the nation to which he belongs. But the idea that it is necessarily nefarious, it's always engaged in overthrowing governments, that's false. That's for the birds. Now, there are times when the United States government feels that the developments in another government, such as in the Vietnam situation, is of a nature to imperil the safety and the security and the peace of the world, and ask the Central Intelligence Agency to be its agent in that particular situation.
One blind date in 1953 involved the overthrow of the premier of Iran. The CIA was clearly involved.
The government of Mossadegh, if you recall history, was overthrown by the action of the Shah. Now that we encouraged the Shah to take that action, I will not deny.
This coup had been the CIA's safest kind of operation, political intervention. Roosevelt and a handful of CIA men changed the government by organizing revolution on the streets.
Mossadegh's crimes had been his nationalization of the great pool of Persian oil and his flirtation with the Russians. When it was all over, the West had held on to the oil and Mossadegh had only his famous tears.
Does he agree with Benjamin Netanyahu, I asked, that Ahmadinejad is the worst tyrant since Hitler and Israel's greatest enemy?
I think so.
We got common goals that make sense for both our peoples. Two such goals are Iran, convincing the Iranians to get rid of its nuclear weapons.
I'd love to think there's something to negotiate with Iran about, but you have a president there who his sworn aim is to wipe Israel off the face of the map and kill every Jew in the Middle East.
There is going to be this armada of essentially these Muslim nations joined with Russia to invade Israel, it says, in the latter days.
Ahmadinejad is the new Hitler. Too many Americans, and particularly on the left, don't see that. They don't see the threat. Ahmadinejad is saying to people in Iran that the end of the world is rapidly approaching and that it's his mission to bring it about by destroying Israel.
Another one said, I want to destroy the Jews of the world. And another one said, only when no Jews are living, the world will be better. We know that the Shoah came. Take Ahmadinejad very seriously.
Israel might be wiped off the map.
And he stands up, he says Israel should be wiped off the map.
Wiped off the map.
Eliminate Israel from the face of the earth.
Wiped off the map.
Wipe Israel off the map.
Wiped off the map.
Wiped off the map.
Destruction of Israel.
Israel should be wiped off the map.
Are we going to have to wait until there's a mushroom cloud over Jerusalem?
Every year, the nation's electricity demands increase nearly 8%, and by the year 2025, Iran's population will reach 100 million. Oil will not be able to satisfy the demand for energy then. Iran is now on the brink of nuclear energy production, but the program started decades ago. In 1958, Iran became a member of the IAEA. Iran started signing contracts with various companies and building nuclear plants. Then came the revolution in 1979. Since then, there has been an 8-year war that slowed things down a bit, and the program was suspended in 2003 for 2 years. But in 2005, the seal was broken and Iran went into overdrive to realize the project that started so long ago. But Iran's nuclear energy program has, for the last decade, been the pretext to a lot of international pressure on the Islamic Republic.
سابقه قضیه انرژی هسته‌ای در ایران به حدود 1353 برمیگرده، یعنی 3-4 سال قبل از پیروزی انقلاب. این حرکت هم با هماهنگی غربی ها بود. رژیم شاه با اینها به توافق رسید و اورانیومی نزدیک به 100%، حدود 90% رو در اختیار ما قرار دادند و عجیبه که این افراد و این کشورها در اون زمان به ما اعتماد داشتن، اما پس از پیروزی انقلاب با 5% ما هم موافقت نمی‌کنن که ما حق غنیسازی تا مرز 5% رو داشته باشیم. این نشون میده که برخورد دوگانه است.
And now to Iran, where the regime again today raised the ante against Washington and the West. A top Iranian military commander said Iran would preemptively strike at any country it perceives as a threat. Now, the warning comes on the same day Iran announced it would not allow UN inspectors inside nuclear facilities suspected of developing weapons. Instead, they offered to hold discussions about them in Tehran. Now, as a reminder, the IAEA said back in November, quote, the information indicates that Iran has carried out activities relevant to the development of a nuclear explosive device.
It wants nuclear weapons. And the second objective, which reinforces the first, is it wants to control the whole region from the Persian Gulf through to the Mediterranean. That's why they're working against our interests in Iran. They're working against America's interests in Afghanistan. That's why they accelerated their nuclear weapons program. And they've sent assassination squads to Washington, D.C.
Iran has now threatened to block the Strait of Hormuz, a major artery in global oil shipping. Now, that warning comes as US and Israeli intelligence agencies, the CIA and Mossad, admit that Iran hasn't yet decided to develop nuclear weapons.
Well, that was an extraordinary development, particularly in a very detailed story that appeared in the New York Times on Sunday.
The basic Iranian uranium enrichment program is being further legitimated, and indeed the administration itself, our administration, seems to think that Iran is entitled to enrich uranium, which is like saying you're entitled to a breakout position just below nuclear weapons capability.
New York, New York, the center of the U.S. financial system, and for many people, the capital of the world. That's why the Big Apple remains a top terror target. And not just for al-Qaeda. Iran could actually be the next big threat.
This is not a surgical strike kind of event. You would have to have multiple strikes over a fairly significant period of time to do the kind of damage that needs to be done. If
And they would strike back.
They're not going to go gently into that good night.
No one buys Iran's claim that its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes. Now, this is footage of Iran's test missiles, which they do like to show to the world to show the power of their program.
Many cells are present here. Now they have their eyes on our power plants, water supply, food distribution, bridges, tunnels, anything that could create fear and also disrupt the daily life of Americans.
If you're an American ally, this is a time to be afraid, to be very afraid, because this administration is going to do everything in their power to keep Barack Obama in office after November and make sure, particularly Israel, cannot launch an attack on the Iranians. Thus, all the information that's come out in the last few weeks, it's in the foreign policy piece, Bloomberg, ABC, and, of course, that defense report that was leaked from Capitol Hill, all of it being done to prevent Israel from launching an attack on Iran's nuclear sites.
Obviously, if they are enriching at Fordo to 20%, this is a further escalation of their ongoing violations with regard to their nuclear obligations, including the legally binding UN Security Council resolutions. So, obviously, we call on Iran once again to suspend enrichment activities, cooperate fully with the IAEA, and immediately comply with all Security Council and IAEA Board of Governors resolutions.
First of all, maximum covert operations to block and disrupt the Iranian program, including taking out their scientists, including breaking up their systems, all of it covertly, all of it deniable.
And now to a story making headlines around the world. An Iranian nuclear scientist has reportedly been killed in a bomb blast in Tehran. It's the latest in a series of deadly attacks against nuclear scientists in that country.
At 7:58 a.m. local time on the 12th of January 2010, in front of his home in Tehran, while leaving for university, a booby-trapped motorbike parked near his car exploded. The windows of the surrounding homes were shattered by the force of the explosion. A number were injured. Masoud Ali Mohammadi was killed.
The scientist Mustafa Ahmadi Rashan was reportedly killed by a magnetic bomb placed in his car. He would be the latest Iranian scientist to be killed in a series of similar incidents. As in previous instances, Iran blamed the attack on what it called, quote, foreign government-sponsored terrorism.
Somebody has been killing
Iranian scientists. We don't know who. I think it's Finland. And somebody screwed up their computer system with something called Stuxnet. Aren't these methods a little better as far as stopping what we want to stop, what we all want to stop?
Well, you know, it's not just our intelligence agency and the American intelligence agency. The International Atomic Energy Agency, an international agency, has said that these measures, or any measures, including the sanctions, have not stopped Iran's nuclear program. If anything, the Iranians are accelerating their program. They are tripling the rate at which they're enriching uranium. They're experimenting with intercontinental ballistic missiles that can now hit Europe. Another couple of years, well, maybe not this coast, but the other coast. And I think that whatever we've done so far in terms of sanctions, in terms of making threats to them, it hasn't worked so far. And that's what the reality we have to confront.
We were not involved in any way, with regards to the assassination that took place there. I'm not sure who was involved. We have some ideas as to who might be involved, but we don't know exactly who was involved. But I can tell you one thing: the United States was not involved with in that kind of effort. That's not what the United States does.
The United States played no role whatsoever in the killing of this scientist. And as to the broader question of tensions, we have been very clear that we seek to lower the temperature on tensions with Iran. And we think that things have calmed down a bit in recent days.
I want to categorically deny any United States involvement in any kind of act of violence inside Iran.
I saw a motorcycle. They were wearing black woolen hats. There were two people. I saw the bike speed by, and it appeared as though they had something in their hands.
I had taken a taxi to work when I heard a huge blast and told the driver to speed up. Later, I heard from the other guys that somebody on a motorbike allegedly had attached a bomb to a car, causing an explosion when the car arrived here.
That something was a magnetic bomb attached to the moving car by the motorcyclists. Iran's Atomic Energy Organization quickly issued a statement saying Tehran will not change its nuclear path. Officials also accuse Israel of plotting the attack, calling it a heinous act.
What is interesting, I think, is that there is obviously a network operating in Iran, and it has internal whether it is Israel or not, there are Iranians inside Iran.
And now they're in the process of developing nuclear weapons, and it appears obvious to me that the administration is doing little to nothing. Now, I'm hopeful that some of the things we're seeing with respect to the nuclear program that the United States is involved with, which is, on occasion, scientists working on the nuclear program in Iran turn up dead. I think that's a wonderful thing. I think we should send a very clear message that if you are a scientist from Russia or from North Korea or from Iran and you're going to work on the nuclear program to develop a nuclear bomb from Iran, you are not safe. And if people say, well, you can't go out and assassinate people, well, tell that to Al-Awlaki. Okay? We've done it. We've done it for an American citizen. We can certainly do it for someone who's producing a nuclear bomb that can be dropped on the state of Israel or provides a nuclear shield for a country that will spread terrorism with impunity and change the face of the world.
Someone's killing Iran's nuclear scientists. The latest victim is 32-year-old Mustafa Ahmadi Roshan. According to Iranian media, Roshan was a director of the Natanz nuclear facility. It's the fifth such attack targeting Iranian nuclear scientists in 2 years. Roshan reportedly had a direct role in key aspects of Iran's controversial nuclear program.
4 rounds of US-led UN sanctions have been imposed on the Iranian nation, and 4 nuclear scientists have been assassinated in the past 2 years. The demand is for Iran to halt its nuclear program indefinitely, but Iran refuses to bow to this demand. According to political analysts, the West's real problem with the Islamic Republic is not its nuclear program.
This part of the world is central to both American hegemony because, after all, the oil and gas in the Middle East is used by China, by India, and by many of the rivals of Western countries. And as the Western fortunes decline and their economies decline, they only have 2 major assets left. One is control over oil and gas and energy sources, and the second is, of course, a very powerful military. So if countries like Iran remain independent during this current situation, with the rise of all countries like China and India, it doesn't bode well for the West.
There was much speculation and assessment of who may have been behind the attack, who would have benefited. The finger was pointed at Israel. By the end of 2010, 2 other assassination attempts targeting nuclear scientists had taken place. And after those attacks, this article in the Telegraph came up. Earlier this month, the chief, meaning then Mossad head Meir Dagan, and a small team of specialists, analysts, weapons experts, and psychologists met in a conference room, the article said. It continued to explain that last Monday, 1,000 miles further east in the Iranian capital Tehran, it appears that the Kidon, elite Mossad agents, killed a top nuclear scientist and critically injured a second as they drove through the rush hour traffic. To assist in the attack, Persian-speaking Mossad deep cover agents have been steadily infiltrating Iran for years. How exactly they helped the hitmen flit in and out of the country remains a secret. It was a secret that seemed to be answered on January 11, 2011, when Iran's intelligence minister Heydar Moslehi announced this.
توانستیم حرکت‌های مختلفی رو که رژیم صهیونیستی انجام میده و افرادی رو در واقع با خودش همراه میکنه برای اینکه اهداف پلیدش رو دنبال بکنه.
There is no more consequential a decision than deciding whether to use lethal force against another human being, even a terrorist dedicated to killing American citizens.
Top secret U.S. technology is now in the hands of the Iranians.
Claiming that it shot down a U.S. spy drone like this one over its airspace.
It is highly unlikely that Iran shot down this drone, that more likely there was a problem with the satellite connection or some other sort of mechanical malfunction.
Military officials confirming tonight to Fox News the Islamic Republic has indeed gotten a hold of a Sentinel drone similar to this one that went missing last week.
The only thing that the U.S. will confirm is that they lost a drone, but they insist that they did not have one shot down by the Iranians.
For the Iranians to get this sort of technology could be hurtful to the U.S. down the road.
The Iranians could exploit the high-tech cameras, the audio sensors, perhaps even some of the
territorial integrity of all member states. But we do not believe that sovereignty demands that this council stand silent when governments massacre their own people, threatening regional peace and security in the process. And we reject any equivalence between premeditated murders by a government's military machine and the actions of civilians under siege driven to self-defense.
Some say by allowing inspections of the Parchin military zone, Iran has demonstrated overt flexibility. This is not something that many countries would allow.
Has Israel promised you that they would give you advanced warning to any such attack, should they give you that warning?
You know, I won't go into the details of our conversations. I will say that we have closer military and intelligence consultation between our two countries than we ever have. And my number one priority continues to be the security of the United States, but also the security of Israel, and we are going to make sure that we work in lockstep as we proceed to try to solve this, hopefully diplomatically.
You know, when you bring Israel into the equation, I think President Obama has been a great friend to Israel. There's no greater friend to Israel than President Obama, and his track record speaks to that, irrespective of what neoconservative officials in the United States or right-wing officials in the Israeli government may say. I think at the end of the day, the United States and Israel are on the same page. They're not in lockstep, though. I think the Israeli government is more hawkish on the Iran issue than the United States government is. Interests don't entirely overlap, but Prime Minister Netanyahu will be coming to Washington for the AIPAC conference in the coming weeks.
It is my great honor to welcome the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu.
I want to ask the 13,000 supporters of the State of Israel
to stand up and applaud the representatives of the United States for standing up with Israel. Democrats and Republicans alike, I salute your unwavering support for the Jewish state. Thank you.
Tonight, we look at how this administration continuously disrespects and undermines America's longstanding ally, Israel. Now, according to ABC News, some Israelis are accusing the White House of leaking extremely sensitive information to reporters in order to prevent an Israeli strike on Iran. Now, here's an example. Foreign Policy magazine is reporting that Israel has gained access to several air bases in Azerbaijan, which shares a border with northern Iran. Now, the story goes on to say, quote, according to several high-level sources that I've spoken with inside the U.S. government, Obama administration officials now believe the submerged aspect of the Israeli-Azerbaijan alliance and the security cooperation between the two countries is heightening the risks of an Israeli strike on Iran.
The world tells Israel, wait, there's still time. And I say, wait for what? Wait until when? Those in the international community who refuse to put red lines before Iran don't have a moral right to place a red light before Israel. Every day I open the newspapers and I read about all these red lines and timelines. I read about what Israel has supposedly decided to do or what Israel might do. Well, I'm not going to talk to you about what Israel will do or will not do. I never talk about that.
Urgent business, Israel and America, to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. I think it's important to delineate a red line for Iran so we're not faced with a conundrum of what to do if we don't place a red line and they just proceed to the bomb.
Now, there's been plenty of talk recently about the cost of stopping Iran. I think it's time we started talking about the cost of not stopping Iran. A nuclear-armed Iran would dramatically increase terrorism by giving terrorists a nuclear umbrella. Let me try to explain to you what that means, a nuclear umbrella. It means that Iran's terror proxies like Hezbollah and Hamas will be emboldened to attack the United States and Israel and others because they'll be backed by a power that has atomic bombs. So the terrorism we see today could grow tenfold, if not more. A nuclear-armed Iran could choke off the world's oil supply. It could make real its threat to close the Straits of Hormuz. If Iran knows that there's no deadline, what will it do? Exactly what it's doing. It's continuing without any interference. Israel obviously cannot be asked to negotiate with a government that is backed by the Palestinian version of al-Qaeda.
Unrest on the streets of Tehran. International sanctions are crushing Iran's economy. Its currency is collapsing, angering Iranians facing skyrocketing costs for basic goods. Their president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, brushes off the sanctions as psychological warfare by Iran's enemies.
Iran's economy can live on its own.
Iran also is under threat of a potential military strike by Israel. But European officials say there are conflicting signals from Iran on whether it's taking that threat seriously. So far, Iran seems to be sticking with a proposal it first raised in July. It even included a PowerPoint presentation first published by Iran expert Barbara Slavin. As the first step, Iran demands the international community officially recognize the nuclear rights of Iran, particularly its enrichment activities, and openly announce it, as well as terminate all unilateral and multilateral sanctions. If that, plus other demands, are met, Iran says it would suspend enrichment of uranium, which could be used as fuel for a nuclear bomb. The only problem is that's the complete reverse of what the Obama administration and its allies want. First, Iran must stop enrichment and come clean on its nuclear program. Then, sanctions will be lifted. So it seems like a non-starter. But Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said this week there is a simple solution.
The sanctions have had an impact as well, but those could be remedied in short order if the Iranian government were willing to work with the P5+1 and the rest of the international community.
Now, amazingly, some people refuse to acknowledge that Iran's goal is to develop nuclear weapons. You see, Iran claims to do everything it's doing, that it's enriching uranium to develop medical isotopes. Yeah, that's right. A country that builds underground nuclear facilities, that develops intercontinental ballistic missiles, that manufactures thousands of centrifuges, and that absorbs crippling sanctions, is doing all that in order to advance medical science. So you see, when that Iranian ICBM is flying through the air to a location near you, you've got nothing to worry about. It's only carrying medical isotopes. Ladies and gentlemen, if it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, then what is it? What is it? That's right. It's a duck, but this duck is a nuclear duck. And it's time the world started calling a duck a duck.